What if I told you that during World War II, a board game was used to help Allied prisoners escape Nazi camps? Not a weapon in the usual sense, not a gun or a bomb, a Monopoly set. Because hidden inside certain Monopoly games sent to prisoners of war were real escape aids, including maps, compasses, files, and money. It sounds unbelievable, but it was real. This is the story of how British intelligence used an ordinary board game to support escape attempts inside German POW camps. When Allied airmen and soldiers were captured by Germany, many were sent to prisoner-of-war camps across Europe. Escaping from these camps was extremely difficult. The camps were guarded, fenced, and heavily controlled. Even if a prisoner managed to get out, he still faced a second problem: surviving outside the camp in occupied territory. An escapee needed tools. He needed direction. He needed some way to travel, avoid detection, and reach friendly territory. That created a serious challenge for Britain. How do you get escape equipment into a camp where packages are inspected and suspicious items are confiscated? The answer came from a secret British organization called MI9. MI9 was created to help Allied servicemen evade capture and escape if they were taken prisoner. It developed methods to support men trapped behind enemy lines and to supply prisoners with hidden escape aids. The key problem was simple. German guards checked incoming packages. Anything that looked useful for escape would almost certainly be removed. So the equipment had to be disguised inside objects that looked harmless. That led to one of the most creative ideas of the war. MI9 began hiding escape materials inside ordinary items. Maps could be concealed in playing cards. Tools could be hidden inside personal objects. The purpose was always the same: make the item look normal enough to pass inspection. A board game was perfect for this. Monopoly looked harmless. It was familiar, civilian, and easy to explain. To a guard, it was just a game sent to help prisoners pass the time. But a Monopoly box also had space, and that made it useful. Special versions of Monopoly sets were prepared so they could carry hidden escape materials inside the box and its contents. These sets could include small files, compasses, real currency, and specially prepared maps. Those maps were especially important. Escaping from a POW camp was only the first stage. After that, a prisoner might need to cross long distances through occupied Europe. Without a map, he had very little chance of getting far. And ordinary paper maps were not ideal. Paper tears easily. It makes noise. It can be damaged by water, dirt, or repeated folding. So British intelligence often used silk maps, or maps printed on durable fabric-like material. These maps were much better for escape work. They were quiet, foldable, harder to damage, and easier to hide inside clothing. A prisoner could carry one in a jacket lining, a boot, or another concealed place without attracting much attention. That may sound like a small detail, but in an escape situation, it mattered a great deal. A map meant direction. A compass meant movement. Real money meant a better chance of buying food, transport, or help. A file meant a prisoner might be able to cut through part of a barrier or remove an obstacle. Each item solved a practical problem. That is what makes this story so interesting. The Monopoly sets were not symbolic. They were built around specific escape needs. And just as important as the physical tools was the effect on morale. For a prisoner, receiving a package like this was proof that people outside the camp had planned for the possibility of capture. It meant escape was being taken seriously. That could change how a prisoner thought. Instead of seeing captivity as permanent, he could begin thinking in terms of preparation, timing, routes, and opportunity. Not every Monopoly set was altered. and not every prisoner received one. The system depended on secrecy. If the Germans fully understood how these items were being used, inspections would become much stricter, and the method would quickly lose its value. So the success of the operation depended on one thing above all. The package had to look ordinary. That was the strength of the idea. A guard searching for obvious contraband might pay close attention to letters, metal tools, or military-looking objects. A board game did not automatically raise the same suspicion. That made it a useful delivery system. The Monopoly sets were only one part of a wider effort by MI9. British intelligence used many hidden methods to help prisoners and downed airmen. Escape aids were disguised in everyday objects. Maps were concealed in unusual ways. Support networks were created to help men move across occupied territory after they escaped. This was not improvisation. It was organized, deliberate, and designed around practical survival. That is why the Monopoly story matters. It shows that wartime intelligence was not only about code-breaking or spies, it was also about logistics, concealment, and solving very specific human problems under extreme conditions. A captured airman did not just need courage, he needed equipment that could actually help him get out and stay out. And British intelligence looked for ways to provide exactly that. The idea also works so well as a historical story because it connects two things that do not seem like they belong together. On one side, you have a family board game. On the other, you have prison camps, escape planning, and intelligence operations. Putting those two things together sounds almost fictional. But that contrast is exactly what makes the story memorable. An object most people associate with entertainment became useful in one of the most serious situations imaginable. That is also why this story is not widely known. When people think about secret operations in World War II, they usually think of Enigma, spies, resistance networks, or covert sabotage. They do not think about board games. But hidden war stories are often like that. The most interesting details are not always the largest or most famous ones. Sometimes they are the stories hidden inside ordinary objects. And in this case, that object was a Monopoly set. So yes, during World War II, certain Monopoly games were used as part of a British effort to help Allied prisoners escape German captivity. Inside what looked like an ordinary box could be the tools a prisoner needed to plan, move, and improve his chances of reaching safety. It was a simple idea, but a very effective one. And it remains one of the most unusual examples of wartime deception and escape support from the Second World War. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to Hidden War Stories. Because some of the most interesting war stories are not the most famous ones. They are the ones most people never hear about.